Hi, welcome back to Netcode-Hub channel. I am Frederick and I'm very happy to have you here today. In today's video, we are diving into the creation of the other API for our e-commerce microservice project using clean architecture. We will also cover how to implement CRUD operations and set up a retry policy to ensure our API is resilient and robust. If you have been following along, we have already built our shared library and product API. Now it is the time to add the crucial other functionality to our microservices architecture, all while maintaining a clean and organized code structure. So let's get started. In the previous video, you've seen how to create a shared library which is going to be used by our APIs. Aside from that, we made another video, and that is where we built our product API from scratch to finish. And now this time around, we're going to work on the other API. You know, when you have a look with the diagram that I created and shown you in the first video, you can see we are having our other API and our product API. We're having three APIs here with a gateway using the Ocelot. Now here, you can see this other API is going to make a call to this product API. Assuming anytime that you want to make an order, we need to get product detail, right? Now this product detail, we do not have the product data in the other API. Since all of these are connected to a single database, other API is going to make a call to product API to retrieve a specific detail of a product which has been called. Now in this case, we want to implement retry policy. Okay. Now, when you make a call to the product API and it fails, it will return that instant response to the user. It will make another retry, and that retry amount or time, we're going to specify it, and it's going to make a retry to that API until it receives it or until it exhausts the number of time being set before it returns a response. So in this API too, we're going to implement the CRUD operation as well. Alright, so let's get started. Now, you know, we are also going to create this in a new solution to make it very simple and readable as well. You know, I'll do my best to make this code simple and readable so that every one of you can understand that. That's great. Alright, so let's start. So what we're going to do here is we're going to create a new solution in here. So launch a Visual Studio and I'll create new solution. So for your information, if you haven't checked out the two previous videos, I've put them in this video description. You can check them out before you get to this. Well, there's also a separate video talking about creating other API, and we're going to integrate the shared library project that we created. So let's first create a blank solution. So here, let's give it a name, and that is demo e-commerce. There's going to be an other API. Since this is a solution, I want to add solution to this. Okay, so that is this one. Now you make sure you choose a location to maybe a specific folder that you have or you are building this microservice in. Let's click on create and let's wait. Now the reason why, I believe you may be asking yourself, why didn't I put all these projects under one solution? Let's assume in microservices, it is not a single team working on it. We may have multiple teams, each is going to tackle one aspect. So currently we have about 4 APIs in here. We have the gateway API, we have the authentication API, we have the other API, and then we have the product API. So let's say we are having 4 teams working on it. So they need to work on it on their own. So each of them is going to have a separate solution. Is that the reason why we've done it in here? And also, when you put them into small pieces, it makes it more readable, understandable, and scary-free. Okay? Not much code. You see it and very simple. Yeah, so that's the reason why I am separating them. But well, you can put all of this under one solution, and great, you can also work with it. Alright, so we have our project in here, solution created. Now let's go ahead and add this project. Now, project that we're going to add here, since we are following the clean architecture pattern, we must have application, domain, infrastructure, and presentation. I've already made a video on how to integrate or even clean architecture in .NET. So if you do not understand clean architecture, please then check the video description or check the channel playlist. I have it in the separate playlist as clean architecture. You can watch that to get better understanding. All right, so let's go ahead and let's add our class library. Now this is going to be an order API. The naming convention is very important, okay? So we can associate them to a specific API. So we have an order API, and this is going to be domain. So this is going to house our business object. So let's create this. Then aside from this, we're going to add a new project. This is going to be application. So let's wait. Yep. So this is ready. Now let's go ahead and add the rest. So we make sure it's the same class. We have our, I wanted to write clean architecture. So that is an order API dot application. Let's also add infrastructure order API dot infrastructure. Then last one that we're going to add here is add new project. That is presentation. This is going to be a web UI, and while this is a web UI here, it is a web API. So I'm going to choose web API, and there's an order API dot presentation. All right, so when you check your solution, you can see that we are having all of them here. Great, now we can do some default cleanups. Let's get rid of these classes which has been created automatically for us. We don't need them for now. We're going to create our own so we can get rid of them nicely and beautifully. Great. Okay, so when you go to our presentation, you can see there's a default weather forecast. Well, do we need it? No. So let's get rid of this as well. And for our HTTP file, maybe we can clear this because we're not going to test it with that. Now that we have everything set, we can do some default cleanups in here. Let me remove all these comments. And we know we are developing it, so we need to add that. Okay. All right, make it very simple and readable. Okay, so let's review this project again and see if everything under this solution is working before we start. We don't want to get started in the middle. We try to build it and we facing problems. No. So let's do it here first and see. All set and done. Now the next thing I'm going to do here is under this solution, we're going to add an existing project. And do you know that project? And that is our shared library. So let's add that. So we now have our shared library added to this. So the next thing that we're going to do here is we're going to add dependencies. Because we have this project, now let's set the dependencies straight before we start working things out. So for this application, now I want to check that the domain. Well, for domain, we don't need any dependencies for that. Now for application, it needs to use this domain as a entity so that it can generate or it can create DTOs for that. It also needs to use the shared library class that we created. So right click on dependencies, go to add project references, and in here we need domain and our shared library. Click on OK. So in a normal circumstance, we have to build this shared library as a NuGet package so we can install them. But I'm not doing that here. I'm just adding it here so that in case you have any issue, you can go ahead and modify it here, and you can also see what is going on. Aside from that, we go to our infrastructure. Now, infrastructure, what is it going to depend on? It needs the shell library, it needs the domain, and it needs the application. But since domain is referenced in the application, anytime that you reference application, it also referencing domain indirectly. So let's do that. Now from our report, from our dependencies, go to, and let's add our set. So add our application. But in application is also using domain and set. So even adding adding this application is going to add shared and our domain. I hope you're getting it. So add this. Now, if you want to verify that, check from dependencies and our project, and you can see we have only one project reference in here. But as soon as I click on this, you can see we have two projects. Great. And now let's go to our presentation. Now, this also going to inherit the infrastructure. So, dependencies, reference, infrastructure, and infrastructure is inheriting all this. So we have them. This is how you have to set the dependencies. Great. Now that we are done, do we need an extra packages to get them installed? Yes, of course we need them. So let's get them installed. Right click on. Let's first work on the application. And in here, from the application, right click on dependencies, manage NuGet packages. And in here, we need to install Microsoft extension, maybe .http. Let's get this package installed. Let's install Poly. Since we're going to make a call to this, you want to implement retry policy. Nowadays, you call them retry strategies. With the new version of Poly introduced, I've made a video on that, how to use caching and all those stuffs in Poly. Then let's add the extension as well. Since you want to register them, register it in the program file. Okay, so we have these three packages installed nicely. The next thing that we're going to do here is, let's go to our infrastructure. Right click on dependencies, let's manage NuGet packages. And in here, let's install Microsoft extension, the dependency injection. We need the abstraction as well. And lastly, let's check the presentation, dependencies, and manage NuGet packages. And now with this, we need to install tools. That is what we're going to use to make migration. Yes, so as usual, rebuild solution. Yeah, all built. We can check from outputs. Yes, so let's clear all these tabs. And now let's first start working on the domain, because we need to create a business. Now in here, from the domain, let's open it, and we're going to create a folder to this. So let's add a folder, and now this folder, maybe entities will be okay for me. Let's add a class, a dbset class, and now here this class, I'm going to say this is order, because definitely there's another API, so we cannot go without having another class. This must be public. And you know, we must have an ID. In my order, I want to have this the following properties. You can add more to yours. we have an ID, other ID, that is a must. Aside from that, I'm going to have product ID. Product ID is on an integer because when creating product API, we said the ID, the data type was integer. So we must make sure it is the same in here. Then we have to, in our client too, we're going to have client ID as integer. Well, client ID or user ID, whatever, it's still going to work. Then here I'm going to have, this is purchase quantity. I know this must be an integer, so I forgot to type in the data type. Maybe I believe you've done that. So we have purchase quantity. Then last one, I'm just adding this. Okay, for the purpose of this, you could add more to that. Then let's see, this is a date time, and now here I'm saying that this is order date. Order dates. I forgot to add O. I believe you've done the right thing. And now with this, maybe we can go ahead and set to date time. Let's see now. Whoa. I want to just get this UTC now, or UTC now, or now. Okay, so we have it set. This model nicely created. All right, that is all we need in our domain. Maybe you can add more, but well, let's maintain this for now. Okay, now let's go to our application, and in here, let's create a DTO, that is data transfer object, which is used to communicate data from your database to user, vice versa. So let's add our other DTO. So this is going to be class. And I'm saying this is other DTO. Now with the other DTO, we want to have public record. And this must be a record. Well, so we don't need this. And now with this record, we want to, let me put this one here. Let's terminate it. We want to have an int ID. This is an ID. We want to have, this must be required. So this is required. And now this required, we want to have it in the form of what you want to range. Now with this range, we want to have the minimum here, it is 1. Maximum is int.max value. And now this is, oh, it should come outside. And that is product ID. We're having the same thing as required. And now with this, you're still going to have the same range. Dot max value. And now this is client ID. We're having the same thing in here, so I can make a copy of this. And I'm going to say this is purchase quantity. Then lastly, I'm going to have date and time, and that is ordered date. The reason why I did not set required here is, you can see from the model, we are having this set to default. So default is going to have a value to that. That's clear. Okay. Great. Let's create our product DTO. So we can add this in case this model here has a lot of properties. The best thing to do here is to add it to the shared library so that you can use one object or one model in 2 projects. But since it's very small, so we can make a copy of it straight ahead and I'll go with it. Okay. So in microservices, try as much as possible to share common files class. Well, so let's say now in let's also add a new class of this and add it as, call it as product DTO. This should also be the same record. Let's set this to public. And now with this, in our product, we need an ID. We also need, this is required, we need name. So that is product name. Let's include the namespace or the using statement. Then we need, this is range. Now this range here, we have it as 1 and dogs max value. And that is product quantity. Then we have in currency, that's the price, and it's required. And now we have in specify data type, and I will say in data type dot currency, and that gonna be decimal. Now we are saying this is price. So this is our product. Now we're going to be creating a model here or a DTO here. Now this DTO is going to be used in the authentication API, and that'll be for the next video. But for the sake of this, after we have done everything, we're going to coordinate them together and it should work. Okay, so let's have this model, and that's going to be an app user DTO, which will carry user information. Like I said, you can also put this in a shared library, so you can be using it here and there. And that is app user DTO. And now this should be a public record. So in here, we need to have an ID, name, telephone number, address, email, password, and maybe, well, with this system or the game system, let's add row to it. So let's have this property set. So we need this to, we need to have an ID. So this is, we have an ID. So that is ID. Then the next thing that you're going to have here is name. So this name should be required. Let me remove this. Let's include using statement. Now this is name. We have the next one as telephone. Let's make this also required. Then we have our next one, address. This is also required. Then our next, you want to have an email, so this is also required. Now let's specify email address. Then next, you want to have password. This is required. Now we say this is string password. And lastly, this required as well. That's going to be the row. So that's what we have for our user. Okay. Let's save this. Then let's create our That's going to be other detailed model. Now this other detail is what you're going to have. It's going to accumulate or populate other detail from user detail to the product detail. Okay, and the price, everything. So let's create that. So here, let's add class. Then we're saying other details. We have to add DTO. Well, since it's the DTOs folder, let's join that. This is going to be public record. Then in this, let's have this required. So we're going to have our integer. Now this int here, this should be required first. This is order ID. Then we're going to have, so maybe I can copy this since you're going to be having required. And let me just grab this, put it in here. And now this is going to be product ID. So as soon as you want to get product the other details, you want to get the ID, the order ID itself, the product ID. You want to get the client ID, and this int who is requesting for this or who has ordered this. And now you want to have a client email. So this should be email address. And email. And the next one here, you want to have an address, telephone number, and a product name. Okay, so let's paste this. And that is string. You say this is telephone number. And then you want to have a product name. This is also required. And that is our product name. The next one, we want to have a purchase quantity required, and this is integer. Purchase quantity. Let's have a comma. Then you want to have the unit price, total price, and maybe ordered date, isn't it? All right, so let's have this should, since I working with currency, let's provide this annotation to it. So data type dot currency. So unit price, let's have the next one, and this will be total. And we're going to have our order date. Maybe we can set this to required. And date time. Order date. So this is what we want. So you can see from here, this is the properties that we need to set values to each whenever we want to get order detail. Maybe you can add more to this, but this okay. Let's clear all this. Okay, so let's save them. So we are done with our DTOs for this project. Okay, now the next thing we're going to do here is we need to do some conversions, because you know here we can implement AutoMapper, Mapstar, and any other third library which can use to convert a DTO to entity and vice versa. But I decided to create my own, so you can implement that. Now let's add a new folder to this, and I'm going to say this is conversions. We did the same thing in our product. So maybe to fast things up, you can use the third library packages. Okay, so in here, let's create a class. And this is order conversion. This is a static class. Okay, so with this, we first need to convert. Let's have our first method, that's a public static order. And now with this order, we need to return an order. So we say to entity, we need an order DTO. Order DTO. Then we say this is order. So return new order. And now with this, for ID, we don't need to specify. Okay, let's see. Now with this, we want to return new. We pass in this order DTO and want to return new order, this order, right? And in that, we need to return. So let's say new order. So ID equal to order ID. Then we're going to have, we need a client ID equal to client ID. Then we have product ID equal to product ID. Then we have order date. So this should be date equal to order date. So let's set, this should be date. Okay. So we have it in here. Do you have any other? Okay, you have purchase quantity equal to purchase quantity. So that is what, anytime that we want to convert, this is what you're doing. We can just make it new. That is all. Okay. Now let's work on the other one, and that is public static. And here we want to return order, which could be now. We say this is order. And also we can return enumerable order, which also could be null. And I will say from entity, which takes in order and a list of orders. So we're saying this could be now, we're saying others. So with a return type, it should be DTOs. DTOs. Okay, let me minimize this. All right, so in here, you want to return single. Now with that, we're saying if this order is null, is not null, or order list here is null, then you want to say that single order that we are having is equal to new order DTO. New order DTO. Now, you know, this DTO, we can specify the properties. So that is an order.id. Then let's check for now. We have order.id. We have order.client.id. Then we have order.product.id. Then we have purchase quantity. So order.purchase quantity. And then we are having date. Okay. So maybe I can put this 1. And at the end, we want to return single order. But before we do that, since we need to return both, we have to put them this and now pass now to the list that we have. Now let's return list. And now we are saying that if others is not null or other is null, that is where you want to execute this. So you want to grab others, then we have the list that we coming in here that select. You want to select other, and in this you want to select new other DTO. Now this other DTO, we want to specify ID. Let's check for null in case. Then we need an ID. Aside from that, we need client ID. So client ID. Then aside from that, we need product ID. Then what again? We need purchase quantity. And then we need order date. Okay. So this is what we need. And when we are done, all that you're going to do here is return others and then this. So the single entity should be null once we return the list. Okay. So we have this set. So now that we are done with our DTOs and our conversions, we can close. Let's make sure we save all this. Let's close them, all tabs. Then we're going to create an interface, which is going to inherit from the generic interface that we provided or we created in the shared library. So in here, let's add a new folder to this. It can be contracts or interfaces. And let's have our interface created. So this is going to be an interface, and I'm going to say this I order. Now this should be public interface. Now this should inherit from I generic interface. Let's specify the model as order. And that is all. Can remove all this. Very simple one. But we can actually add one. We can extend this. We have to, or you want to get orders by ID. As soon as you provide client ID, we want to retrieve all orders. Okay. So maybe we have to add, and in a generic, we do not have that. So this interface is limited to this API. Therefore, let's add one here, and there's going to be task enumerable. Now we are saying this is orders. So this order, and now here we are saying this is get orders async, and in this we want to specify expression as function. So func. And in that, it is an object of what? Order. Let's provide this so we can specify any expression in it. Now that we have this, we need to implement this. So we have to go to our infrastructure and undo that in there. But before we create an interface or a repository for this, let's finish the application project. This layer, let's finish that. The last one that we need to do here is we need to create service. Now this service is going to be using to call an external service such as the product API, retrieve data and populate it. So let's have our service also created. Then we can rest assured and I'm moving to the next layer. Okay. So here I'm going to create another one. Let's have another folder. I'm going to name it as services. Now this service says I'm going to have an interface of iOrder service and the implementation in here. Now this iOrder service, what are the methods that we want? Currently we want only 2 interfaces, but we can add more, as you know. And here I want to get task. That is an IEnumerable. And I need order DTO. And here I'm saying get ordered by client ID. And what I need to do here is specify the client ID. The next one, I need task, and here it is an order detail. So if I want to get an order detailed, I need to have this method implemented. So get order detailed, and here what I need here is an order ID. Okay. Let's implement this. So let's create a class, and that's going to be ordered service, which has to inherit from iOrder service. Let's implement the interfaces, and in here, what are we to do? Let's inject our HTTP client straight ahead. Then we're saying this our client. Aside from that, we need resilient, because we're going to create that. Okay, so we need resilient pipeline provider. Now that's what you're going to use to get the retry policy. So this should take a value of string, and aside from that, we're going to say this is resilient pipeline. And that is what we need. We need 2 injections in here. Okay, now let's get product. So we want to set this product aside. Now this should be public. We're going to apply unit testing. So I think maybe we have to make this public so we can test this and see whether this will work or give us an expected result. Okay, so this will be public. And now with this public, we want to say it is an async task. This task will return a method of product DTO. Now this, we say this is get product. You know, this API does not contain product, so it means you're going to make a call to product API, passing the ID. And now in here, we want to call API. So product API. So using this HTTP client. And also, but before we do that, we need to redirect this. Let's direct this call to the API gateway, because by all means, you're going to create an API gateway first. So that is where you need to make a call to. So let's direct this to the API gateway. So since products API is not responding to outsiders, so at the end, anytime that you want to make a call to another API, you should direct this call to the gateway, and then the gateway will forward it. You cannot directly make a call to that API. That is a product API. No, you have to pass through the gateway. Okay, so that is the reason why we are doing it in here. Very soon, when we start creating the API, you then understand this very well. So product. So let's have our get product, and we're going to make it a call. So we're going to say it's an await. Then let's use this HTTP client that get async. And now here we need to implement our path, the address in here. We're going to set base address. So let's conjoin it with API, and here the controller name is product. Do you remember? So product, and in that we need to specify product ID. as a parameter. Okay, then we're going to check. So this is going to return true or false, and then we are saying if get product dot success status code, then we want to return null. But in case it is, we want to get the product in here, and aside from that, you want to say get product dot content dot read. Let's get read from JSON async. Now pass in our product DTO, because this method is returning product DTO. Okay, then let's return our products. Nice. Okay, so this method, we're going to be calling this in our get other detail and the subsequent methods. Okay, so here with the get product, it should come from here. Now this get other detail, you know, whenever you want to get details in here, we need to get the product information from the product API, and we need to get the user information too from the API. So we need to create, now in our authentication API, we're going to make it possible so we can make a call to that. So let's have a method also created. And now here we're going to say get user. So we're going to get user from here. Then we're going to make a call to this user API, that authentication API that we are here to create. And here we're doing the same thing. So I can grab this. And I'm saying here, this is public async task. And now here we need app user DTO. So here we are saying get user. And now we pass in user ID. Okay. Now let's grab whatever thing that we have in here, because it is the same thing. Well, you can also make this generic, but for now we are not doing that. So we're saying get user. Then we can now go ahead and check it up. In case it isn't, then you know we want to get user DTO from here, and we need user ID. Very simple. We're also done with this. So we have these two methods here, which are going to be used in these repos. Great. Now let's start. Get other detail by ID, and that is this one. So this is get other detail by ID. Now with this method, what are we going to do? So let's first, we can get the order. So let's make it prepare. We're going to prepare them before we populate and return. So prepare order. Then in here, we're going to say that this order is equal to await. You know, we are having this client, but we need to also inject our interface that we have created. So that's the key thing. So we cannot skip that. So I order, and I'm going to say this order interface. So you can grab this order interface from here. Then we're saying order interface dot get, not get, it's rather find. So find by ID, and now here we need to specify the order ID. We are saying if order that we are getting here is null, or we're saying this order that we have dot, maybe ID is less than or equal to 0, then we want to return null. Else, what you want to do, we want to get retry pipeline, and this retry pipeline is going to be configured in such a way that as soon as we couldn't get the response, you're going to retry again. So retry strategy or retry pipeline. Then we're saying it's equal to this injection that we created, resilient pipeline dot, then we can have get pipeline. So we are not getting the type. Let's check the injection. It should be provider. resilient pipeline, use poly provider. And now in here, we can now have access to get pipeline. And now what is the name that you're going to give it to it? Maybe we can give it a name here as maybe since it is retry, my retry pipeline. We give it a name. So this is going to get the pipeline for us. Now this is a custom name that I am giving to mine. You can also change this, but before you change it, wait and I'll say it before you try to make change to this. Okay, now let's also prepare product. So now we have our pipeline configured. We can now go ahead and make a call and prepare products. So in this, we're going to say that this is going to return product DTO. So with that, you're going to say this retry pipeline that we have created dot execute. Now let's just execute async. Let's specify which maps to. Then we're going to make a call to this, that is get product. And now in that, you need to pass in order.product ID. So this is going to make a retry. As soon as you couldn't get the couldn't connect to the API, it's going to make a retry. And we're going to specify the number of retry in the settings. So don't worry. Now here too, let's prepare client. And now with this, we're going to say this is app user DTO. It's equal to await, then retry pipeline dot same execute async. And in that, you want to say a token maps to await, then get user, passing order.client ID. Okay, but with this, we have to check. And I should remove one of these. We have to check if user is not null, because from product, the reason why we are not checking for null here is, in product, we have it checked here. That is from the order. So by all means, if you are not having the product, how can the user click on it to order? Well, that is the use case that I'm basing on. But well, you can also check for that. And use that, you can also check for null for that. Well, I am not checking this. I've left that one for you. Now let's populate order details. So after you make a new call, you want to return new order details. Now this, so let's start populating it. Now here, what we need here first is we need an order ID. So order ID is the first thing. We need product ID. So, and now that's the product DTO dot ID. Do you have that? Product DTO, this should be an await. You can grab this. Product DTO dot ID. Then we need this app user DTO. We need dot ID. That is the client ID. We need name. So let's specify the name. That's the client name. Aside from that, we need email. So we need email. Then we need an address. So we need to also specify the address. So app user dot address too, we need that. The next thing is we need the client telephone number. So app user dot telephone number. And the next thing here, we need the product name. So product DTO dot name. Then we need the purchase quantity. So product. Now, purchase quantity won't come from product because product does not have this purchase quantity. It is the order. So here we can say this order dot purchase quantity, and you're going to have the price. Now here we're talking about the unit price, so the price of the product, and now we are saying this is coming from the product DTO dot price as a unit price, and now here we're going to have the total quantity. So this quantity is going to come from the price multiplied by the quantity, right? This is simple mathematics. So you have a product dot quantity multiplied by the order dot purchase quantity. Then we have our date. That's the order dot ordered dates. So this is what we need to return. Alright, so we are still having an issue here. It does not contain 12 argument. Let's see. So pick definition, and then we have an ID. From here we have ID, product ID, user ID, that's the client ID. We have email. Well, we have an address. Well, that's what we forgot. So we need to add that. And this is coming from after the email, and that's an address. Great. So aside from that, we have the telephone number, we have our product name, purchase quantity, and then we have product name, then purchase quantity. Then we have the unit price, we have a total price, and we have other dates. Let's see. And also before the email, we need to add client name. So we have this required, and that is string and name. Great. So save this, and we have that. So with this method, we make two calls to an APIs, and we can get in the data, and then we are populating it in here. Okay. So the next method that we need to implement here, it is get others by client ID. So let's get this done as well. Then with this method, what are we going to do? So let's get all client others. So with this, we're going to say this others is equal to await. Then we can get this from the other interface dot. Here we can use this interface that we created. So that is a get others async. And now within that, we need to specify the function. So we are saying this other must to this other where client ID is equal to this client ID. So you want to make sure that we get all client ID. And now this is going to return list. Okay. So we have an others here return list, and now we can now check. So if others.any, this others that we have in here .any, I think this should be others .any. Then we want to return, in case we don't have any, then please return null. Else, what I'm going to do, then convert it. So in case, okay, then convert from entity to DTO. We need to convert from entity to DTO. So we're going to say that we want to grab it as others. Then this others, we say equal to this other conversion that you created dot. So from entity, because what we are going to get here is entity, and we want to return it to DTO before we get it to the client. So we need to specify, and this is going to take in the order. So we say this is others, But before that, this should be null because we want to convert multiple. That's a list. So you pass in this others. Okay. Now we need to. Okay. Then once you have this, you want to return this others. So get the list, convert the list to DTO, and I return it. And that is what we are doing in our service. All right, so we have these two methods implemented, and we are using our retry strategy of strategies. You can see we have one in here, and that's what we are using to make a call to two APIs. Okay, so we are done with our service, and we can say goodbye to the application layer. So let's close this. And now we are going to, I nearly forgot one thing. That is another application layer. Since we have our retry strategies created, we need to register them and now set a default base address and etc. Isn't it? Yes. So I think we should do that. Let's add folder to this. And in here, we are going to make it as dependency. Injection. Let's create service container. Here we have service container. This should be a public static. And in that, you want to have our static service collection, not provider. Service collection. Then we say add application service service collection. Do we have that service? And now we say this services. And then we need an configuration as before. So this is config. So in here, let's register HTTP client service. And also, let's create dependency injection. So here we're going to say services.add HTTP client. And now with this client, let's specify this other that we created. And we're going to create an interface. So that's an other service. That's going to be the implementation. Okay. So this should be the interface. Order. Okay. Then implementation will come soon, but we haven't done that. So we have using application.services, not that. Oh yeah. So there's an order service talking about the. Okay, so use this. And then we have the ordered service. So control period, let's remove necessary usings. And now in here, let's configure our HTTP client. We can specify options, which maps to. Then we can say options.base address. So what is a base address? Let's set this to new URI. And now with this, we can specify this in here as maybe the API gateway, then base address. Then with this, I think let's have it in a config in like this. Okay, so we go to the config file, and that is our app setting.json file. we're going to have a section known as API Gateway, and I'm going to specify the API Gateway base address, and that is what we are setting up in here. Aside from that, let's issue a timeout. So we have an options.timeout. Let's set this timeout to time span dot from seconds, maybe 1. So within 1 second, in case it could not get a content, then timeout. Okay, so once you're done, the next thing I need to do here is to create retry strategy. So let's create retry strategy in here. Now with that, we're going to say this retry strategy. We set this equal to new. We're going to have retry strategy options. And now with this options, we want to should handle, that is new predicate builder. We need to specify this using poly. And now with that, which exception do you want to handle specifically? That is task cancelled exception. So within this, when you implement retry policy in poly, you can catch the timeout exception. But when you use timeout in this HTTP client, you need to catch the task cancel exception. That's what we are doing in here. So this should handle is equal to this. And aside from that, let's set a backoff type. Then we're going to say delay type the consistent. So it should give it a consistent number so we can make a retry. Then use jitter. Yes, set it true. Maximum retry attempt. Retry 3 times in case you have a first delay or first task cancelled or first timeout. Then what is it? Delayed time. We say this time span dot. Maybe I want to delay from milliseconds. And in that, I want to specify 500. Okay, so when you first make a retry, delay for 500 milliseconds and then start another one. Then maybe on retry, I want to just display it in the console, so log the exception. But I don't want to log this into the file, because for the file, you want to log an exception which is genuine, not this one, because this one is just a retry. So you don't want to log that. But if you want to log it, then you can go ahead and undo that to the file. So within this, we want to say this is a message. So message is equal to, we're going to have this string interpolation. Then we say here is on retry. We want to grab the number of retry and also an attempt. Then the first one on retry, we're going to have ask dot. We're going to have retry attempt retry. So attempt number, and the next one is an outcome. Okay, so with this outcome, we also want to grab ask dot outcome. Was it successful or not? When we have this, let's log exception. That's the class that you created. So log exception. Now this, we don't want to log to file, so let's log to console. We pass in a message. Let's also log to debugger. Okay, and at the end of the day, we're going to return value task dot completed. Let's make sure we save this. Okay, so we have a retry strategy created. Now the next one here is you're going to use this retry strategy. So retry strategy. Now how do we use it? We're going to say services dot add resilient pipeline. Then let's give it a name. So my retry pipeline. Do you remember? Yes, I believe you now remember, isn't it? And now after that, let's make an option. We say this is builder, which maps to, we're going to have a builder dot add retry. And now since you can create a new option here, but since we have the option created already, well, there's no need for us to create an option. We can go ahead and now use this straightforward, very simple one. Then at the long run, what I'm going to do, return services. Very simple, isn't it? Okay, so now we are done. Anytime that you want to use this, all that you need to do here is consume this service in our presentation layer, and that is all. Save this, and now we can say goodbye to this application layer. Now let's go to the next layer, and that's going to be the infrastructure layer. Let's go ahead and create a repository. So let's implement what we created. So repositories, and we have an interface already created. So all that you need to do here is to create a class. Now there's going to be other repository. This should be a public. Now after that, we need to include our other DB context, but we haven't created any other DB context. So this should come from other. Now this interface, let's implement the interfaces. Before we come here, let's remove all necessary users. Let's go to create our folder so we can add a DB context, and now claim it as data. Let me add other DB context class, and that is an other DB context. Other DB context, which is going to inherit from DB context. Let's use entity framework call. We can generate constructor, and now in that, let's specify a DB context within the options. Then in that, we can also use our primary constructor. This should be public. Then let's create our DB set. So public async, not async. Let's have our property DB set, and this is an order. And now with this order, we're going to say this is orders. So orders, yes, we have it set. Now we can also clear these ones. Now let's go back and I use it in here. So we say this other DB context. We say this is context. And to create what are we going to do, we also need to implement our try catch. Then we have our catch. So within our catch, we have an exception. And now with this exception, we want to log this. So with this, let's log original exception as we did. So original exception, and in that we can have access to log exception. So we created list log exception dot log exceptions, and here let's specify our EX. Aside from that, we need to display some scary free message to user. To client, and in that we want to have a look at this. So we want to say return. Send is going to return a response. So a new response. This new response, and that is false from the flag. And this is a message, maybe error occurred while placing order. Okay, so this is a message that you want to display. Now with this, we can grab this. Since you're going to be using it everywhere, all that you need to do here is make a paste. And make a paste. When we get there, we're going to modify what is in. So get by async. Get others. Let's replace this. So we are handling this local exception first. We know we have global exception also there waiting. This should be an async. Then the next thing I'm going to do here is let's have get others. So get other, we're going to have await, then get by async. Here we want to specify the name. So we're going to say that maybe other maps to this other that's ID. If it is equal to this entity coming in dot ID. This will return single or default. Then we're going to say if get other here is null, that it is not null, and get other dot ID is greater than 0. It means it has content, and in case it does, then I want to return new response. And now this is false, and saying that other has been placed. Is that so? Yes, we cannot, because you know others are going to be generated. The IDs are going to be generated by the person and by the system. So here, what is the essence of the question? What is the essence of getting the order by ID? I'm not sure it makes sense right now. So maybe a client can place multiple orders, and client is not mandated to provide order ID. So I'm not sure checking this is essential. Well, let's remove this. And let's go straight ahead and now add this. So we say this order here is equal to our context that is coming in dot orders table dot add, and now let's add this order, and after adding we can get the entity in here. So we have await context of save changes, and we can check if order added dot ID here is greater than 0. It tells you that yeah, we have it. It's been saved. Okay, so in that you can use this ternary operator to check it. So we can say return order.id greater than 0. If so, then return new response. And now with this response, this should be true. And I'll say that order placed maybe successfully. Else, what do you want to do? You want to return false. So let me put this in a new line. Return false, and error occurred while placing order. Maybe we can type in that. Error occurred placing order. Okay, then let's go to, we have the delete. Now for this delete, okay, you have a set. All right, so we need to find the order. So we say this is order is equal to, then await. We have this order, find by ID, passing this entity.id, and that is an order. Now here, what are you doing? Let's check if order is null, then let's return new response, and now there's going to be false. I say order not found. But in case it is there, what are you going to do? Then let's delete it. So we're going to delete it. We're going to say context dot others dot remove, and now pass in this order. After that, await, then context of save changes, and at the end return we're going to return new order. That's a new response instead, and that's going to be true. And in here we're going to say order successfully deleted, and that is this. Now error occurred while deleting order. Then the next one here is find by ID. So with this method, we're going to say this is an order, and this is equal to context dot orders dot find async, passing this ID. This will return null, so we can check if order is not null, then we want to return the order. Or maybe we can say that return order is not null, then operator, then return this order. Else we want to return maybe null. But well, in case order is not null, it's still going to return null. So you can actually just have it return order, that is all. Or you can even do this. Both will work. So okay, well, maybe you can have retrieving order. Maybe why do you have this? Okay, so in here we haven't returned this, so we cannot. So let's throw new exception. So we're going to throw new exception. And now with this exception, that is where we are passing on this method, which is taking a message. Okay. Now get all is also quite simple. We're going to get all orders. So that's an await context dot, then orders dot as no tracking dot to list async. Then we're gonna say return orders not null, then return this orders, else return null. We have an exception, so error occurred. We need to throw new exception as well. Then in here, let's remove this. So while retrieving others, we can just have a look in here retrieving. Let's add s with this others. Now let's get other by async. So in here, you're gonna say this other is equal to have await context dot others. Then we're gonna use a where clause. We pass in a predicate. Now with this predicate, then we want to return first or default, then return order is not null, then return this order, else return null. Okay, now in case you have any issue, because you are returning an order, so we cannot return response, we need to throw this response instead. Throw this exception. And the same thing while retrieving order. Okay. And the last one here is we have, okay, not last, we have two. So get orders async. Now with this, let's have our orders. So equal to, we're going to have await context dot where. So we're going to have an others dot where we pass in our predicate, and now with this we want to return dot to list. So you can see there's a slight difference here, returning a list, whilst this is returning first or default. And we're going to return, but this is not now. Then return this others, else return now. Okay, we need to also throw this. Okay, the last one, we want to have an update. So we want to first get an order. You can call this method passing this entity.id, and we're going to say if order is null, then we want to return new response. So we can say entity name So even here we cannot get a name here. This we have an ID, the product name, a client ID, and that's another ID. So other, let's say other not found, I think we can do that. Okay, so let's make this as false. But in case it is found, then we want to detach it and update. So context dot entry. Now with this, you want to specify this order. So dot state equal to, then you want to detach, and I'll save it. After we are done, let's say order. So that's a context that's order dot update. Then let's pass in this entity. This entity has the ID already, so it's going to update it. Then after that, we can save changes. So await context dot save changes async, and we're going to return new response. This will be true, and now here we are saying that order updated. So now we are done with this. We're going to create a dependency injection. That's a service container for our this interface of this layer 2. So let's add folder to this, and that's a dependency injection. Okay, so in that we need to create a service container. Now in our service container, let's set this as public, static. Then in here, we're going to have a public, static. This we're going to return iService collection, as you know. We say add infrastructure service. Then let's add configuration as well. So we're going to add database connectivity. Aside from that, we're going to add authentication scheme. So we're going to say that the shared service that we created, so the shared service container dot add shared service, and now with this it needs a DB context, and our context here is other DB context, and in that let's specify our services that we have in here. Aside from that, we need a config, and we also need to have this set in a presentation layer. So what is the name that I want to give it to as a file when logging? So we say my servilog, then in that we can grab the same file name. Okay, so the next thing here is to create dependency injection, and now with that we're going to say services dot add, it should be scope or singleton, then I order, that's our interface, and I believe we know 8 implementation, that is an order repository. So we have this set. At the long run, return services. Okay, so after that, let's also add a middleware pipeline, and that should be a public. This should be static I application builder, and we say use infrastructure, maybe policy, this I application builder, then we say this is app. Now in here, register middleware such as global, which was created in the shed, global exception, and the DT is to handle external errors. Then we have the next one as listen to API gateway only, and the DT of this is to block all outsiders calls. So we're going to block all outside calls, and also listen to API gateway only. Okay, now let's have this. So that is a shared service. Then use shared policies, parsing this app. At the end, return app. Save it. And that is all. Now let's go to our infrastructure. That is the presentation. So we're also done with our infrastructure. Let's close this. Let's go to our presentation. So let's go to, in our product API, we created a section, and that section contained our connection string, our servilog file name, authentication section with the key, issuer, and the audience. Do you remember? We're going there to make a copy of that, and we paste them here because we cannot type it again once you have typed it already. Yeah, so we have it, and that is it. So we have a connection string, this is a connection string. We have a servilog, and now this is not an product, this is other API. Then there's the same key for authentication and the audience. Like I said earlier on, you can implement this, save this in a vault or in a secret server, so we can go in there and grab it. Else, you need to copy this and paste it in all APIs app settings, which is not the best, but for the purpose of this demo, I think here it's okay. Now let's see. So after we are done with this, the next thing I'm going to do here is registering this, the infrastructure in the program. So in here, we need to use the namespace. So using is an other API dot, then we're going to have infrastructure dot dependency injection. And we can go ahead and I'll say builder dot configuration or the services dot add. Then we can have infrastructure. Then in here, we need to have builder dot configuration. Okay. And aside from that, when it comes to this using, we also need to use app.use infrastructure policy, and that is all. Now we have one thing left, and that's going to be the last one for this video, is to create our controller. But before we do that, let's go to the properties, our configuration. In here, it's going to run on HTTP, so we can get rid of this. So we have the, let's see. And now this, it should run on the port of 5002. So 5002. You know, product is running on 5001, and other is running on 5002. And what? HTTP. Okay. So now that we are done with this, let's go in and create our controller. So right click on the controllers folder, and we're going to add a new controller, API empty one, and it's going to be audit. So others controller. So here we need to inject our interface and our service. So I order controller, that's I order, that's an interface, and we're going to say this is order interface, then I order service, and that is order service, because we're going to be using both. Alright, so for the first method, we're going to have HTTP. This is get. And now with this, it's public async task. And you should have an action result. So action result. And now this should return I enumerable of order DTO. And now we are saying this is get orders. Now with this get orders, we are saying that this orders equal to awaits. Then we have the order interface dot get or async. When you have it, we're going to check if it's not any. So that is an orders here dot any. The orders that we have dot any. What do you want to do? You want to return not found. Okay, so return not found, and now in that, let's put some message in there. So no order. So detected in the database, and that is what we want to tell the user. So if client wants to access the orders whilst he or she hasn't ordered anything, that is what it's going to say. Now let's see the next one. But in case orders are found, then we're going to say there's a list, order list. Then this order list, we're going to use this order conversion. This order conversion dot from entity. We're going to provide the orders in here. So this will be null. Then provide the orders with this. This is going to return a list. Then but we can also check if this list that we coming in dot any. Then what are we going to do? We want to return. Okay. So if return not found, else return okay with the list. You can see, so this is going to return false because we are negating it. So we are saying that in case no result is found in there, then we want to return not found, and this should be so any should be question mark. Okay, then the next thing that we're going to do here is we want to get. Let's go to the next one, and there's also going to be HTTP get. Now with this, it should be the same. So that's a public async task. Now this should be action result, and in that is a response type. So it shouldn't be get, it should be post, because we're going to add, and then that's a response coming from our shared library. Now aside from that, we want to say this is create order. So create order in here, and now with this order we need to provide this order DTO. Okay, then we say order. Then aside from that, what are we going to do? Let's set for model state first in case it isn't, so incomplete data submitted. But if in case it worked, in case this object here has values, then let's convert this to entity. So to do that, you're going to say get entity. So get entity, we say this equal to, we're going to have this order conversion, then dot to entity. Then in that we specified this order DTO. So when we do that, you're going to have, maybe let's grab this access, but first of all, I think we should grab the response. So let's say this is a response. Then we're going to say await. So order interface dot create async. We pass in this get entity, and we can check return response dot success flag. So here we need to use flag. If it is true, meaning it's success, then what I'm going to do, display okay with the response. Else, what I'm going to do, you want to display bad request with the same response. So we are switching the status code based on the flag, the state of the flag, if it is success or if it is true or false. Okay, now let's see, that is post. If I want to get single order, that's going to be an HTTP get, and now in here we need to specify an ID. Now I want this ID to be integer only. It should be public async a task. This should have an action result, and this action result should come with order DTO. So with this order DTO, I'm going to say this get order, then specify order ID. Okay, but this ID should the same as what we have specified in the verb. Okay, so in here, we can say order is equal to await. Then we can get this from this order interface dot find passing the ID. Then we can return. We can return order is null. If order is null, then return not found. Then we can say that order not found. Else, what are you going to do? Return okay, and I return it with order. Okay, now here this is going to return this order, right? So instead of returning this order not found, Let's pass in now. Yes, of course we want to return, and we want to return this. So let's pass in now for that. Alright, so yeah, I forgot one thing. You know, this is returning this order, and then you want to return this DTO. So I think this shouldn't be there. We should check it well using if order is null. Then we want to return not found, and I'll pass in now. Then else we want to say that get this order should be in bracket. Okay, so here is equal to order conversion dot, and here we are converting it from entity, so we need to provide the order, and that is this order, and null here for the list. Now we can return okay with the order. Okay, now the next thing I need to do here is update. So in case I want to update, what will I do? What can we do to update it? It's an HTTP, that is HTTP put, so it should return the same response. So public async is a task, and this should come from action results, and this is coming from response, and we say this is update order. Then we need to pass in our order DTO as well. Then in here, what are we going to do? Let's convert this order DTO into an entity. So we say convert from DTO to entity. So we're going to say var, we're going to have our order, then we're going to have this for now for the list, and we're going to have order conversion dot to entity. We need to specify this order DTO, and now for the list. Okay, then in here, what are we doing? We have our order to entity. Okay, so it's just we don't need only this order. So once you're done with this, we can go ahead and save this to the database. So let's have our response. So it's equal to, then we're going to have an order interface. We have an update, so we're going to update this, then specify this order. This should return a response, so we can check return response dot flag. If it is true, then return, maybe we can return no content when it's updated, or okay. We can but let's return okay. If it is true, return okay with the response. But in case it isn't, then maybe bad request will be okay with the response as well. Let's have a look on delete. So this should be an HTTP delete. And now with this, we should specify an ID. Well, so for delete, we are not specifying ID because we're going to push the whole model. You can also specify the ID if you don't want to use it. This should be public async task and action result, and here we need the same response, and say delete order. Now with this order, we need an order DTO, and in here we need to first convert from DTO to entity. So we have it as this order is equal to, you're going to have order conversion, and that is this dot to entity. All that you need to do here is specify the DTO. We have that. Even do we have to convert it? We don't, because you're going to delete it and we need only the ID. Well, we need to do that. Now let's have our response. It's equal to this order interface dot delete. Now this needs a module of order, so that's the reason why we need to do pass it on. After doing that, we can then go ahead and now check response. So let's go and then grab this. Okay, so after delete, you want to say response, return a response of bad request. We want to also do that. Then let's get client orders. So we have client orders, and this should be an HTTP get. Let's put this where we have this, and that is HTTP get. And now with this get, all that you need to do here is let's have a route, and now we say this is client ID. This should be integer. Then we should have a public async task of action result. Now this action result should come from order DTO, and now with this order DTO, you are saying get client orders, and we pass in client ID. So with this, we're going to say let's first check if client ID here is less than or equal to 0 in here. We want to return bad request. Return bad request. And in that, we're going to say something like invalid data provided. Okay, that is if this client ID here is less than or equal to 0, but I'm not sure it will be. If not, then let's go and grab the orders, or client orders. So that is an order interface dot get clients dot get by async. Now this, okay, this get orders dot get orders async. All that you need to do here is to pass in the client ID, because this, since this is taking the function, we need to specify that. So whereby this client ID is equal to the client ID coming in here, and that is so. Okay, now this is going to return a list, right? So let's check and I return. Let's check in case it is not null. So we're going to return. We are negating it, and then we are saying orders that we have in here dot any. Then we want to, so in case we don't have, we want to return not found, else we want to return okay. Alright, so this is what we are having. This return other, so maybe we can pass in null. Then the next thing that we're going to do here is we have this get client order by ID. We're going to get a list of orders by the client, and that is what we've done. We have a last method to work on, and that is get order details. So this is going to get the whole list of orders. Now you want to get specific order detail. Okay, so I learned from this. This should be null, and also we need to return this here. Yes. Okay. Now let's have other details, and this should be an HTTP get. So with this, we need to specify the routes, and now here to be saying this is client. And now with this client, we not the client itself, because there's an order detail. So we say details, then let's specify order ID. So order ID, which should be integer by all means. And so this is public async task. Now this task, what we are doing here is we want to action results, and we're going to return this order detail. So we pass in this order detail DTO, and I will say this get order detail. We pass in int, and that is order ID. So in that, we can also check in case the order is less than or equal to 0. In case it isn't, then we're going to say order details equal to, you have an await, then order service that we have in here, that is order service dot, then we can get this, the method that we created, we added, that is get order details. And now with this get order details, what we need to do here is we specify the order ID. Okay, then we want to check. So if order detail that we are getting in here is null, then what can we do? Let's use the ID, because definitely the ID, as soon as you get an order, the ID will be greater than 0. So let's say return order detail dot ID greater than 0. If yes, then return OK with the order detail. Else, return not found in here. And now maybe we can put it no record found. Okay, when we check this get client orders ID, we are implementing this interface, but rather we created a service here to get it from an API call, right? So maybe we can use this service. So we're gonna say that this order service dot get, we have get orders by client ID. Now this takes in only the client ID. So let's specify the client ID. And this is going to give us a list. So we can now grab it and now use it in here. Well, so we have our controller also implemented nicely. All that we're going to do here is let's rebuild this solution. After that, we perform database migration to make sure a table has been created and added to a database, and we run our application, our API, and now check it out. We're having an issue here. Let's check that out. Okay, so in here we are having this order ID. It is saying something. Not code return. Okay, so in case it is not, in case order is null, orders is also null, then you want to return default, null for default. Yes, we can check it again. We can build this again. So let's run this. But before we do that, migration should come first. We make sure we set presentation as startup and we perform a migration. So set this as startup project, package manager console, then you make sure you select infrastructure. Then let's add migration. We have a folder created already. So we're going to put everything in there. Let's give it a name. I'll say first. Oh, I forgot to add S. Okay. Yeah, so that's ready. It's created. Now let's update our database. Alright, so that is ready. Now let's run that and check it out. Alright, so this is ready. Now let me pull this console. We have it in here. Okay. So let's try to get product orders. Okay, so here we're having an issue, and I'm saying that, let's see, unable to resolve service for the type I order service. Yes, we haven't reset that. Let's go and solve that quickly. When you go to solution, you check the application. We created the service container here, but we did not reset that. So let's go to our program, and in here we need to use using other API dot, then application dot dependency injection. Then in here, the next thing that we're going to do is you're going to have builder.services dot, then that is add application service. We need the same builder.configuration and when you check again from the service container, do we have, yes, so okay, sorry, it has been added. Now you can go ahead and I'll restart this and it should work now. Okay, so this is ready again. Let's get product. Hey, others, not product. You want to get others. We are having error, so when you check, this is null and we did not specify the base address. Okay, so we need to specify the base address of the API. So let's close this. Now we can do that from API gateway and our base address. So let's go to our app settings. We must have, that is an API gateway, and now in that we should have base address. And now this base address, it is on HTTP, and that is a local host. The port is 5001. That is the address for the product API. Okay, now let's rerun this again. Let's try this one more time. Alright, so you can see that we have the data in here, and actually we are not having any data yet because you can see we have no other detected in database. It means the database is well connected. Let's go and add other. So let's maintain the other ID 11, and also product ID is 1, client ID is still 1, and now we have our quantity here 10. Okay. Let's click on execute and let's see. So error occurred while placing order. Let's find out from here. And when you check here, you can see we have the login here and error occurred while saving the entity. See the inner exception. Okay. Now let's go up. So an exception occurred while saving this. So cannot insert explicit value for identity column in the table order when insert is set to off. Alright, so let's check that. Let's rerun this and I'll put the breakpoint so we can debug it and check it out. So from the controller, create is in here, post, that is create, and I'm going to call this method so we can put breakpoint in here. And now let's go to the repo. And so where you have this create, we're also going to put a breakpoint. Even here will be okay. All right, let's rerun this again. Check it out. So let's go to post order, then try this out. We have product ID 1, client ID also 1. Then we have purchase quantity, let's say 10. ID will be set automatically, so we need not to do that. Now let's say a point is hit. Now this DTO, so we want to get this order, and we have it in here. The ID is 0. Great. Let's click on next. And this is where the problem is. Okay, so it has been saved. Click on next. Okay, and now it has been saved. And now let's see, what is this order? Is the order greater, the ID greater than 0? Yeah, the ID is 1, so greater than 0. If so, then continue on, and it should return success. Yes, order placed successfully. It means we provided value to this ID, and that shouldn't be that because they set automatically. So we can, let's also add product of ID 2, then the same client ID, and that is this. Let's save, execute this, continue on, and we have it also. Yes. So if I open this, and let's try to get order. So pass in the ID, order ID is 1, and I'll try to execute this, and we should get the order in here. If you want to get client order detailed, let's see. Now this will not work because the API, product API is off. We need to turn it on. Okay, but for now you want to check whether retry is going to work. So let me just minimize, make it small, and I'll bring this here, and I'll check it out. So if I pass in order ID of 1, I want to grab this order detail, check what is going to happen. Now you want to make a call, and I can see we have retry attempt is 1. You can see it's retrying how many times? 3 times before it gets response in here, and I'm telling you request timeout, try again. So watch out. You can see that we have the log, and I'll check it here. The retry is over here. You can see the attempt here is 2. It is attempting 3 times. This is a 2, and we have the third one. So it starts from 0, 1, 2, making 3. So this is 2, meaning it is a third one. We have 1, and we have 0, and that is over here. So you can see it's attempted 3 times. It tells you that yes, our timeout policy is working. And as soon as you have a timeout, you know we are getting a request. That's an information out of it, as you can see from here. Great. Now let's make sure our product API is active. Now let's see whether we can get data from, they can get response from that. So let me open the project. So that is, and now with this product API, let's run this on HTTP, that is port of 5001. And let's see. So let's get product in here. Let's check and see whether we have product in a database. Alright, so we have product of ID 1. Alright, so this means it can work. Now let's go to, there's an order. And now this order, let's try to get the details here and see whether it's able to communicate with the product API and now get the record for us. Alright, so you can see it is ready. Now, when you have a look in here, you can see, yeah, it got it. So we have a product name. We have purchase quantity, the total per unit price here, and this price here is coming from the product. So if you want to cross check, you will see this is a product detail. We have there's an ID, so a product ID of 1. We have quantity, and that is set. We have price multiplied by the quantity that the user want to buy, that is 10, and we have them set up in here. Yeah, but you can see we have email address and telephone number set to null because it's trying to reach the authentication API, but it couldn't find that. So it has returned now, and we have the rest data in here. Good. So when we create authentication and then we connect them, by then we can get everything in here. But since we haven't created the authentication API, we can maintain that. We can leave this out and focus on what we have built now. Alright, so this is working. You can go ahead and try the delete and also the update. It's going to work. Alright, so that is all for today's video. We've successfully created our order API using clean architecture, implemented essential CRUD operations, and also set up a retry policy to enhance the reliability of our service. I hope you found this tutorial helpful. Do not forget to like, subscribe, and now hit the notification bell so you won't miss the next part of our series.